The Jay Garvens Show. Home Mortgage Talk. Saturdays 8 a.m. and Sundays 10 a.m. on KRDO News Radio 105.5 FM and 1240 a.m. And now here's your host, Jay Garvens.
Southern Colorado, this is Jay Garvens. You're listening to The Jay Garvens Show. We are actually in the third week now of March. This is a very, very exciting week. I've got a lot of updates here for you. Of course, I personally appreciate you listening. If this is your first time tuning in, again, my name is Jay Garvens. This is Home Mortgage Talk. I'm Southern Colorado's Home Mortgage Jedi, and I am the owner of Colorado Springs HomeMortgageLoans.com. That's Colorado Springs HomeMortgageLoans.com. And throughout the entire show, you can get a hold of me personally, 330-1457. 330-1457. I don't have telemarketers or interns answering my phone. It's actually me, the owner of the company. And today we are going to have a very exciting show for you. It's Choosing a Mortgage Broker or Banker, Part 2. And get this little theme. This came to me in the middle of the night in a dream. Nowadays, competing and completing a loan is rocket science. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Completing a loan is rocket science. You have to know how to choose your mortgage broker or banker, why, and what kind of criteria to have. But of course, as you know, I like to do housekeeping items first. I'm going to share a little bit of economic numbers, and I'm going to try to decide whether we're going to go into depth of these or not. It depends on my mood and how long I think the material in the show will be. But a couple of different things here. Probably the most important thing that happened this week, midweek Wednesday, a couple of days ago, we had the largest increase in treasuries, which means the largest increase in interest rates in 6 months since last October. So that's October, November, December, January, February, March. 6 months. So the point here is this. Up till today's show, I was telling everybody, if you have a government loan that's above 4.5% FHA or VA, give me a call because I can get you down to 3.75. Conventional, if you're 5% or higher, you absolutely want to call or get a hold of me via the website or email because rates were as low as 4 1/8. And these are zero-cost origination loans. And then if you have an investment property 4.5 or above, you definitely want to talk to me because we're getting 4.75 and below. That was all effective through this last show. Now today, this Saturday, this weekend, Sunday, I can't tell you that because rates bolted up big time. And there's a myriad of reasons why the rates have bolted up. First of all, we've got gas prices out of control, and just wait for Israel to shoot a missile over there in the Western Bank, and you're going to see fuel go up to $130 a barrel. That is going to affect the treasuries absolutely. We've got the hyperinflated economy by the government pumping money in. I have told you for weeks and weeks and weeks, everybody needs to brace themselves for later this year. Our credit status as a nation is going to be downgraded again. You heard it here first on the Jay Garvens Show, Home Mortgage Talk. Our credit was already downgraded once, August 5th of last year. Taking a break here to sip down some energy drink here and tell you that it's going to happen again. That's my prediction. We went through a single dip, we went through a double dip, and now I'm telling you that I am predicting that we are going to go through a triple dip, which means we're going to get another recessive economy, and that's not to scare you. Knowledge is power, and we can plan right through it. That's going to take a big part. But what I'm telling you is the game and the rodeo is soon going to be over, so you definitely want to choose a mortgage broker or banker fast. I believe 4 months from now, I'm not going to be doing any reference to refinance on the show. I have a lot of clients, almost a third of you that have called, are purchasing homes, like Ernesto Montoya. He came in this week. I'm very, very excited about him. In the future, next week, I'm going to have clients, live radio clients on the show to just build some comfort for you to make contact. There's any way that you can contact me if you have a mortgage question, specifically a purchase, refinance. Call me directly at 330-1457. I personally return all my calls. It's 330-1457. I know that Suzanne, Karen, I hope I pronounced your name correctly, she's very thankful that she called. She is helping her daughter, and then also she and her husband restructure their loans, and it probably is going to be anywhere from a $300 to $400 a monthly savings, more than $4,000 to $5,000 a year, because she made one phone call for she and her wife, Marina. So I'm going to be talking about Suzanne more and choosing a mortgage broker later in the show. But I do want to finish with a little bit of the housekeeping issues. I'm going to tell you right now that any one of these shows, last week I did Choosing a Mortgage Broker or Banker Part 1, What Are Your Options? And you can get these archived shows at krdo.com. Of course, we're on KRDO News Radio. I'm very, very thankful and blessed to be on the station. Eric Singer came up to me last week and introduced himself and said, hey, I have some interest and involvement in real estate. We should talk. Of course, Mike, one of your morning drive hosts, and of course, Dan Koshel, who produces my show. Every single person here at KRDO News Radio is so incredibly personal. I've got to know Greg, briefly got to know Fred Holstead. He's in and out in the morning, but everybody here is extremely friendly, and that means a lot to me because I'm not a radio guy. I'm a mortgage guy. I'm a daddy. Just for some of you that have not learned my history, I want to talk to you personally and let you know I served in the military for a full career. I was down at Fort Carson in the 3rd ACR, 4th Squadron. I was part of a Black Hawk crew, flew down there for years, took an early medical retirement, and now have been flying a desk for about 10 years. Came here in 96 from Wisconsin. I'm a cheesehead, Packer fan by choice, but cheesehead by birth. And if any of you guys are New York Giant fans, you suck because you beat us in the divisional game this year. You beat us in the NFC Championship game in Lambeau Field when Brett Favre was there. I respect the G-men, but you guys seem to be our nemesis, just like the Cowboys were back in the 90s. So, finishing up some of the housekeeping and getting back to the matters at hand with the actual treasuries. Why are they being driven up? What's going on in the economy? Before we get into choosing a mortgage broker or banker, nowadays doing a loan is rocket science. I want to touch a little bit on this. Rates have been like a roller coaster, up and down. And in October, they hit a high, selling at about a 2.4% yield. Today they went up to 2.269% yield, and the lowest that they've been was actually way back in August when our debt was downgraded. They were down to only like 1.696%, and they hit that again in September. The rates are going to come. The rates are going to go. Eventually, they will be gone forever. So this should be a call of action for you. I'm not into scare tactics and telling you guys to call right now. You know, we're not at Lowe's. You didn't just walk in and see a appliance on sale like I did last week and ask the guy, hey, how long does this sale last? He's like, till 5 p.m. today. So it's like you have this urgency to move. I'm not trying to draw that out of you. I'm just telling you, the same way the housing bubble burst in 2006 and 2007, if you're getting into the foreclosure, short sale, home purchasing market now, by this fall, it's going to be the end of the game. And that's the same with interest rates. And why it is so preciously sensitive right now is the fact that inventory is still flush. The actual prices are still low and affordable. And for a very brief moment in history, the interest rates are at an all-time low. The inventory is still going to be there for a little bit. We've got millions of houses to clear out of foreclosure from the mess we did in 2007 and 2008. The prices are going to gradually rise as the inventory decreases. That's common sense. But the biggest thing is that rates are still going to be good at 4.5%. They're just not going to be at 3.75. And for every $100,000, that's about $25 to $30 difference in a mortgage. So I'm going to give you an example here before the break and before we go into the show. My wife, Marlo, and I bought a house last week. I am owner of a mortgage company. I am not above anybody else. I'm not smarter than you. I appreciate you even listening. I know a majority of you out there are FM listeners. You have a choice to do a million different things this weekend morning, and you choose to listen. So I appreciate it. And you can call me at 330-1457, or just go to my website. If you don't even want to talk with me, go to the website at Colorado Springs Home Mortgage Loans. It's all spelled out, plural. Colorado Springs Home Mortgage Loans. You know you're at the right website if you see the Jay Garvens show in the radio tab and all of that. Off on the right-hand side, enter in your information with the questions you have, and we casually can work at your pace. I mean, I may be talking fast into the radio and drinking an energy drink, but you don't have to. You just put in the information, and then you can go from there, and we can start a dialogue. But we bought a house last year. I sold everything with my wife between 2007 and 2008. Now, I didn't wake up one morning and have an epiphany that we need to sell. I've been tracking the market for 10 years, and I knew we were at a bubble. You can't give people investment properties with no verification of income, with no money down, and expect that to go on forever. It didn't pass the common sense test. So we sold everything, and we've been renting. And here's just a story. We sold our house in Cheyenne Meadows in 2009 for $229,000. We knew we were at the top of the market, and we sold that. 3 years later, this last summer, I helped a couple purchase that exact same house in Cheyenne Meadows for $2,000 and $8,000. So it had depreciated. We've been renting, and now we purchased last week. And I got 3.75% interest rate. As the owner of the company, I didn't take some special deal for me. The rates I have as you have, you can get 3.5%, but Wells Fargo would give me $1,800 of credit back for that rate. So I eliminated all of my closing costs. My wife and I bought the house with no origination at all. I got all of our earnest money back. And my interest rate was at 3.75 or $1,800 a month. Rather than if I would have been at 4.25, I would have been at $1,980, almost $2,000 a month. So that additional quarter of a point does make a difference. So it's important for you to act now. Act now. Make sure that you get something going. You can do that by simply calling me, 330-1457. I take the calls personally. Straight ahead. Don't go anywhere. We're going to get into the meat of the show now. I'm going to pop right into it of choosing a mortgage broker and banker. Nowadays, completing a loan is rocket science. You're listening to KRDO News Radio. I am Jay Garvens, your host.
The Jay Garvens Show. Home Mortgage Talk. Saturdays 8 a.m. and Sundays 10 a.m. on KRDO News Radio 105.5 FM and 1240 a.m. And now here's your host, Jay Garvens.
I am Jay, and you're listening to The Jay Garvens Show. Home Mortgage Talk here on KRDO News Radio. Today's subject is choosing a mortgage broker or banker, part 2. You can go into the archives. I did choosing a mortgage broker or banker last week. And what are your choices was the title of that, and what are your options. Today, it's choosing a mortgage broker or banker. Bada boom, nowadays completing a loan is rocket science. So it's a very complex process. Some of the things we spoke of last week is the most important things when you are choosing a mortgage broker and banker is considering the pricing. What are their costs? What's the interest rate? What are their products? and what are their service. So pricing, products, and service. You have pricing, which is obvious that I'll go through. Products, which are the variety, which is, I went through last week saying the difference between a bank and a broker. And then service, the most important thing. And really, very straightforwardly, I want to let you know that that's where the brokers, me personally, but other brokers as well, separate themselves, because our service is so much more important, so much more comprehensive than a bank. But sometimes people do not need customer service. There's great times to go to a bank. It's like driving a Ford Fiesta, which is a very, very good car, but you get what you pay for, and then a Cadillac. A Cadillac offers you something different than a Ford Fiesta. Both of them have four wheels and an engine, and they get you from point A to B, but the Corvette, the Cadillac, the high-end Lincolns, those are cars that offer you additional service, additional comfort, additional add-ons. That's kind of the difference in the service of a bank and a broker. Unless you're Wells Fargo and you're in private banking and you go to the fancy private fourth floor, the average individual walks in off the street and deals with a teller and then is given to a loan officer within the bank, a bank broker or a mortgage banker, rather, and walks them through the process. But pricing, products, and service is very, very important. A next thing that I'm going to talk about is return on your investment in the loan. And that's where the pricing, the products, and the service comes into place. So let's recap a little bit. I told you in the first segment of the show that if your interest rate and you have an FHA or government loan is less than 4.5%, there's not a lot that we can do for you. But if you're at 4.75% or higher on a government loan, FHA or VA, you absolutely should call us. And you really need to call me immediately this weekend, because this rodeo is almost over. I mentioned in the last segment that interest rates early last week on Wednesday spiked up a full quarter of a point. So 3.75 isn't available right now. But I assume that it will come down. But the more it goes up and then comes back down and then goes up, it's an indication that we're at the end, the end of the rodeo, the end of the push of the refinance boom that's been going on for several years now. And conventional, if you are 4.625 or lower, you're fine. But if you're definitely 5% or higher, you need to give me a call immediately. And you can do so at 330-1457, 330-1457. And if you're at an investment property where you're 4.75% or below, you are doing extremely well. But if you have an interest rate on your investment properties that's 5.75% or higher, you absolutely need to give me a call. And pricing is important. One thing that's interesting is when you go into a bank, you will have an origination fee. Ask if you are going to have an origination fee, because when you deal with a mortgage banker, they are going to give you an origination fee, and they are going to get something that's called a yield spread, a premium off of the interest rate that they give you. As a mortgage broker, unless you're paying me personally, 95% of all my clients have zero origination fees. I'm telling you, with pricing, you have the products, but you also have the fees that go on top of the product. So you have the interest rate, but then you have the closing costs. That's the easiest. Right now, the full closing costs on average out the door, out of a client's pocket in my company, is about $1,500, period. That's title. That's a little bit of filing fees. That's an appraisal. And then everything else is rolled into the origination. Now, with a bank, you're going to start out with an origination right away because that's how they're paid. So the employee is paid through the origination. The bank, with the big building and the big signs, are paid by the yield spread. Now, here's an example. I'm like Penn and Teller, those magicians in Vegas that will do the magic, and they really tick all of the other magicians off because after the show, they'll pull the curtains off the stages and show how all of the magic worked. Well, that's what I'm going to do in mortgage right now, and I'm going to do this exactly on my loan that my wife and I did last week. And this might startle you, because it certainly startles me. I'm a mortgage broker because a friend came up to me and said, you want to own a mortgage company? But mortgage brokers make a lot of money. The same reason why real estate agents and or accountants and or attorneys and or doctors make a lot of money, because there's a certain amount of time requirement, licensing, and stress involved with our industry. But here's how it works. Last week I did a loan, retail loan, for my wife and I as we purchased a home in the Broadmoor. We've been waiting 2.5 years to buy one. We got a good deal, and I told you it was a $395,000 loan. I had $4,000 of proceeds from the seller, and my interest rate was 3.75%. I had no origination at all. My full expenses, because it was a larger loan, was at about $1,800. Well, Wells Fargo, the investor that I chose, because brokers, we can be licensed with anybody. I've got 10 different companies. Hey, you want a Chase loan? Hey, you want a Wells Fargo loan? Hey, do you want an Icon loan? I can get them all. But on our particular loan, we had no origination whatsoever. But because I acquired the 3.75% interest rate on a good day, Wells Fargo gave me $1,829 credit for the interest rate of 3.75%. My wife and I paid no origination. Wells Fargo offset our costs. The seller gave us $4,000 of proceeds. So all of my insurance, all of my escrows, all of my other inspection fees and everything were paid for. I got my earnest money back. I got like $3,970, whatever, of my earnest money back. But my company, Garvens Group, Colorado Springs Home Mortgage Loans, got $11,000 for originating that loan. So how much do you think a bank is going to make when they charge you 1% interest, give you 3.75%? They're getting $5 to $10,000 every single transaction. Do you think it's any mystery at all that the banks are always the biggest buildings in the city? I mean, you got First Bank and you got Wells Fargo downtown. Why? Ask yourself, why do they have the biggest buildings and the biggest signs? Because they're making a lot of money. And that's why it blows me away that the federal government is bailing them out. Everybody yells at the oil companies being bailed out, but very few people yell about the banks and them being bailed out because they give us money, but they're making money hand over fist. And that's what's very, very important about pricing. So the general rule is this. If you are paying in origination, question the individual, ask him to remove it, or simply call me, 330-1457, 330-1457, and we'll help you get that removed. Now, products. We touched on products last week, and I'm going to expand on this measure. It's this simple, and I'm going to use this analogy and move on. Perkins, Dodge, and now Chrysler. But Perkins Dodge has a very, very fine vehicle. I'm driving a Dodge Durango that my wife and I bought off the lot 2.5 years ago. But if I think I'm going to go on to Perkins Dodge lot, Will Perkins, phenomenal guy, great conservative here in town, great patriot. But if you think he's going to allow you to walk onto his lot and he turn around and talk you into a Chevy or a Toyota, you're smoking crack. Because he's not going to do it. He's there to sell you his product. Now, if you go down to Helton Auto, who is an auto broker, he doesn't care whether you buy a Toyota or a Chevy or a Corvette or a Mercedes. That is the same exact thing in mortgage banking and mortgage brokering. If you walk into Wells Fargo, they can tell you they can give you any product in the world. But the bottom line is they're going to give you Wells Fargo products. And I'm going to give you a couple examples of how lending is a rocket science where nobody can have all of the products. There's so many out there. So if you walk into Wells Fargo and you don't fit into one of their products, they're either going to have to tell you, you know what, you really should call Jay Garvens at 330-1457 and go to a broker for that product because we can't offer you the right product, or they're going to turn around and twist it and talk you into their products, even though it's not the best option for you. Now, I like Wells Fargo. I'm a premier Tier 1 broker approved financially with them. I worked at Wells Fargo, but I'm just calling a spade. Where if you come into me as a broker, I'm licensed. with Wells Fargo, with Icon, with Franklin American, with 360 Mortgage, with Stearns Mortgage, with Bears Mortgage, and like 6 more. I can't even remember. But we're financially licensed. Icon's another one. Caliber is another one. So we've got a lot that we are licensed with. And here's an example. 360 Mortgage will do a portfolio product for an investment property if you want to own more than 4 and up to the Fannie Mae Freddie Mac limit of 10. Wells Fargo will not do a portfolio loan for you, which means if you walk into Wells Fargo and you want to get an investment property and you are trying to get your 5th one, they're either going to talk you into one of their products or talk you out of buying a house. That's just jacked up. You come into a broker and I'm going to have that product with you, but it's for another company. Now here's another one. Wells Fargo, if I go to Wells Fargo, a VA IRRRL, I can go ahead and do no appraisal. But if you're not currently having your mortgage serviced by Wells Fargo, they're going to give you higher fees for going in there. So if you do a VA Streamline IRRRL and you come in and your mortgage is existing with Wells Fargo, I'm probably going to take you through that investor. But if you're like with Chase Bank of America or U.S. Bank, I'm going to bring you to someone else and get you a better fee. So the mortgage broker has the advantage to have a variety of products. And with the loan process being so incredibly complex, you have to have options. So when you go into a bank, understand it's just like walking into Colorado Springs Toyota or Perkins Dodge. You better expect to leave with a Toyota if you go into a Toyota dealer. You better expect to leave with a Dodge if you go into Perkins. Now, some of you out there might be off your rocker and fell and hit your head and explain to me how, oh no, I can go to Phil Long and buy something other than the brand that he's selling because I bought it used. That's the exception to the rule. The reality of the matter is that with products, a broker is going to have more variety. And I'm going to tell you right now that that's the biggest difference between brokers and bankers. The third area here is service. We're going to be getting into that here, and the service is going to be a big difference. If you go into like Ant Federal Credit Union Bank, or Ant Federal Credit Union, they are a phenomenal institution. I know Tom Bechtel over there personally. They have a great loan division. He will tell you, I will tell you, that they personally have to pump incredible volume. They might do anywhere between 15 and 20 transactions minimum a piece each month, and they work volume. You're going to wait quite a bit of time. You are going to get a good product, but you can't expect to have customer service. You can't expect to have too unique of a product, or you'll bog down their system. That's just a reality. They're an amazing institution. So is Air Academy Federal Credit Union, another great institution. But credit unions and banks are different, and the difference in this fact of service. If you have to help 20 people a month as opposed to 5 people a month, it's nothing more than common sense as to who's going to get more attention for their particular scenario. Now, the bigger the bank or the bigger the brokerage firm is, the bigger your overhead's going to be, and the bigger amount of waste or expense that's going to slip through the cracks. So your smaller banks and your smaller brokerage firms are going to be able to give you a more competitive price if they are keeping their overheads low. That directly affects part of the service. But the biggest thing with service and the biggest thing with products is the title of the show today. Nowadays, completing a loan is rocket science. And let's go into some of this. I talked to a client today, Suzanne Karen, and she called and she said, my daughter wants to do an FHA streamline. And you wouldn't believe how complex it is. They literally are changing the rules one more time on FHA. And if you've got a question about FHA, you personally, as you're sitting there driving down the road, enjoying your weekend day, sitting at your house, streamlining live the internet off your web, smartphone, whatever you're doing, if you've got an FHA or a conventional or a VA question, give me a call and I will actually walk you through the process. You can call me personally at 330-1457, 330-1457, and I'll go ahead and walk you through the process. But the bottom line here is that FHA is going through a change to where literally it's like that who's on first and what's on second game. If you've originated your loan before mid of 2009 and you're locking your rate after the 19th of April of 2012, then you can get a certain monthly mortgage insurance premium. I mean, come on. Do the stars need to align? Does a red Corvette need to cross the street as a black cat is jumping over an umbrella to make all this happen? It's absolutely insane in the main brain. And this is where lending has evolved to. I'm a pilot. And when I tell you that lending nowadays is a rocket science, I'm not kidding you at all. And straight ahead, I'm going to go through some of the actual details, some of the ways that if you're working with a professional, where as the owner, I personally work with you and have individuals that are licensed that work with you that can take these complex tasks and turn them into basic layman's terms so your mortgage becomes an enjoyable experience rather than a hair-pulling adventure. So I'm Jay Garvens. You're listening to KRDO News Radio, The Jay Garvens Show. Be back with more details, fun, and stories right after the break.
The Jay Garvens Show. Home Mortgage Talk. Saturdays 8 a.m. and Sundays 10 a.m. on KRDO News Radio 105.5 FM and 1240 a.m. And now here's your host, Jay Garvens.
Welcome back, Southern Colorado. I am Jay. You're listening to The Jay Garvens Show, KRDO News Radio. Home Mortgage Talk. I'm your home mortgage Jedi, and we've been talking about choosing a mortgage broker and banker. Bada boom. Part 2. Nowadays, competing and completing a loan is rocket science. Nowadays, completing a loan is rocket science. We've went over pricing, product, service. I got into the stories about how a potential client, Suzanne Karen, called me this week, and we were helping with her daughter get an FHA streamline, and it is absolutely complex. You start to add in subordinations, and what a subordination is you can refinance a first mortgage, but if you have a second mortgage, you got to go through a whole trail of paperwork to actually get that product removed, get the new mortgage in place, and then the bank with the second mortgage agrees to go back in a second position or behind the first mortgage because the bigger dollar amount should always be prioritized. But the first and second mortgages are actually placed by date and not by size. So, if that makes sense, great. If it doesn't make sense, then you go ahead and give me a call, 330-1457. I'll go ahead and review that with you. 330-1457, and I can walk you through any of the rules and regulations. But other parts, some of this stuff just gets absolutely crazy. I got to tell you some funny stories here. Some of the stuff that happens in mortgages is absolutely insane. Like one thing that's become rocket science that it's been around forever. But with a VA loan, if you want to do a VA loan, you've actually got to be married. You can't just go buy a house with your girlfriend. And this is fun, crazy, insane. It makes sense because in order for you to be in the military and be sponsored and be part of the insurance, the benefits and all that, you have to be married. This is why so many military people get married so darn young. I did. Coming out of college, I maybe kind of loved my first wife. But I don't really know that. I got married because I was off to Germany and she needed to come with. But the hilarious story is I got a young couple sitting in my house, very, very responsible. She graduates valedictorian out of a local Fountain Security School. She loves her hubby dearly. They're going to get married in the next year or so. They've got it planned. They just need to get their act together. Well, guess what? VA says, sorry, we're not going to count her income and you're not buying a house unless you're married. So this is part of rocket science. I literally am not kidding you. We walked up to Cascade and we got them married. In order for them to complete a loan, I've actually had to walk people through and say, hey, if you want to complete the loan, you got to get married. I got another couple that just did that. I said, hey, it's great that you guys have been living together. That might be fine for you. Personally, it's not a life choice for me. But I don't judge at all. But I'm telling you, you're not going to buy a loan, especially a government VA loan, unless you are married. So we've actually walked down. I was taking pictures. She's got her family there. And I'm like, boy, what in the heck are you going to do for a loan here? Other stuff. Talking about choosing a mortgage broker, especially if you're doing a purchase, you've got a screw loose if you're using a mortgage banker. Because as a mortgage broker, first of all, you need to ask anybody, mortgage broker, mortgage banker, anybody, whether they own a house themselves. If they don't own a house themselves, tell them to take a flying leap off a rolling donut, grab all of your books and your stuff, and get out of there. And if you're asking yourself right now, why does that matter? Smack your head against the side of the window in your car or hit yourself in the head. That's like going to a marriage counselor that's a single dude. What kind of advice can a single guy give you about your marital counseling? If you got someone that's in collections, are you going to go to them for financial advice? I don't think so. So if you're going to someone to complete a mortgage and buy a house and your real estate agent or your mortgage broker doesn't own their home, then you just need to leave and stop the process right there. Now, I'm also telling you that you need to have someone with some experience, because originating a loan nowadays is rocket science. You've got so much regulation. I honestly believe the only reason that I'm still in business is that for 12 years I was a United States Army officer, and I was so buried in paperwork, and I didn't have a choice, that I learned to just stomach it, because the paperwork in this industry is what's driven the number of 8,500 mortgage brokers down to 1,900, because the paperwork is just mountains. Now the processors have to be licensed as well, but I'm telling you, if you have an individual, you sit down with a mortgage broker, mortgage banker, first of all, ask him if he owns a house. He actually should own more than one house, because if he's going to walk you through the process, it'd be nice for them to have multiple properties and everything. But I'm telling you, they at least need to own one. Secondly, is you have to make sure that they've helped at least 100 to 300 people. If they haven't helped at least 100 to 300 people, you're part of their internship. Now, this is not some five and dime appliance financing. This is your house. This is your life. This is your world. So you got to make sure that's good. Really, realistically, you should have someone that has originated 300 to 500 transactions in order for them to feel comfortable. And if you want to be the test rabbit, the test lab animal, go ahead. But I won't choose it for my wife and me. And also, you always want to get several opinions. I had another client this week. His name is Tony Holland. Tony, I hope you're listening. I encourage people to choose several different venues, see what their pricing is, what their products are, because that's what Tony and Abby is doing. Abby, his wife, got a referral from the Christian-based organization that she works at, and she's meeting with that gentleman, then she'll meet with me, and then they'll make a decision and they'll move forward. I'm not going to pretend that we are everything to everybody. I will tell you right now that if you have like a streamlined conventional mortgage and it's $110,000 and you need no paperwork in detail at all, I'm probably going to refer you out. If you own a mobile home, I'm not the person to help you. If you own a condominium with a low dollar amount, I'm probably going to refer you out to a bank who does higher volume, give you less attention, but might give you a more specific product that you require and would benefit you the most. So, These are just some of the things here. We're going to continue on in the last segment to exactly what you should do from this point. What's your call to action? After you know the pricing, the products, the servicing of your mortgage broker or mortgage banker, how do you start the process? What do you do from that point forward? This is so crucial. So stay tuned, straight ahead. We'll get into it in more detail. I'm Jay Garvens, KRDO News Radio. You're listening to The Jay Garvens Show.
The Jay Garvens Show. Home Mortgage Talk. Saturdays 8 a.m. and Sundays 10 a.m. on KRDO News Radio 105.5 FM and 1240 a.m. And now here's your host, Jay Garvens.
Bada boom, Southern Colorado. Here is the last segment of the day. This is the bread and butter. This is the meat. This is the call to action. What in the world are you to do first? Okay, first of all, determine whether you want to purchase a home. Determine whether you want to purchase an investment property. Determine whether you want to refinance. How do you determine that? If you've got a heartbeat and if you've got money and you've got a desire to have a retirement, you should absolutely consider an investment property. There's no doubt at all. I've done entire shows that you can go on to krdo.com or to Colorado Springs homemortgageloans.com. Listen to my archived shows, and it explains why it is the time. Even Warren Buffett, the richest man in the world, the most incredible investor in the history of the United States, says right now is the time to buy, because houses are at an all-time low and they're only going to appreciate over the next generation. And you can listen to Demographics of America Part 1 and Part 2 in my archives. Click the radio tab on KRDO or Colorado Springs homemortgageloans.com. Go in, look for the very first show, and you can go from there. But if you are looking for an investment property, the first thing you need to do is just call me. We are a specialist in investment property loans and refinances, both purchases and refinances, and in VA and FHA government products. We do those better than anybody else in town. Now, if you're a refinance, I shared with you before, if you're above 4.5%, 4.75% on a government loan, FHA or VA, you absolutely need to give me a call immediately at 330-1457, and that's the trigger point for you saving $100 to $300 a month. If you're higher than 5 1/8 to 5 1/4 on a conventional loan, you want to give me a call immediately. If you're above 5.5 to 5.75 on an investment property, as I'm going to have personal testimonies and clients in here next week, you need to give me a call. Paul and Nancy Wegman, we saved them over $580 a month, more than $6,000 a year just because he made one call. So that's the first thing you need to do in call to action. Number 2 is you have to organize your paperwork. You've got to know what interest rate you're at. I mean, if you're driving down the road right now and you're listening to this and you don't know what your interest rate is and you don't know for a fact that it's at 5% or below, you need to stop. Turn around, go home, pull out your mortgage statement, the most recent one, call your company, call your mom, call anybody you need to find out that interest rate, because I'm telling you, by the end of the summer, it's going to be gone. And you can be crying on your own, and if you have a return on your investment in a certain amount of time, you're going to regret it and you'll have totally missed the boat. So here's the biggest piece of meat that I can give you today, the call of action. Every single person you deal with, every single mortgage broker, banker that you talk to, you need to ask them, even more so, ask them, what is the biggest determining factor in my refinance? If they say it's the weather or how you feel or what's your goals, they're beating around the bush. They should tell you within the first 10 minutes that refinances are not emotional transactions, that they are financial decisions, that you need to determine as fast as possible what is going to be your return on investment in the loan. How much is your expense? How much are you going to save? And how many months does it take for you to recapture that? If you don't have someone that's going through that in great detail up front, pack your bags. Get the hell out of there. Go somewhere else because you got someone who doesn't know what they're doing, because that's what it comes down to. It's very simple. We might have a whole boatload of paperwork, but the whole reason for refinance is very, very simple. Hey, how much are you going to save me every month? I don't care if that's saved interest through going from a 30 to a 15-year mortgage or interest rate. Interest rate is what you like to talk about. I like to talk about monthly savings and what your investment is. If I save you $400 a month, but it costs you $16,000, you're smoking dope if you're going to do that program. Now, if I save you $50 a month and it doesn't cost you 1 red cent, then you're going to be ahead $600 a year because you have no reinvestment capitalization. You don't have to recapture any expense. So let me go through this. Very simple. And if you have questions, go to my website, Colorado Springs, homemortgageloans.com. Put your questions along the right-hand column. Put in your personal information. I'm not going to bite you. I'm not going to come stalk you. As a matter of fact, I'm going to interview you, and we see if you get taken care of. A free consultation. I'll give you 5 minutes, and this is what I'm going to tell you. How much money can we save you every month? Let's say that you got a $100,000 loan. Let's say your interest rate's at 5%. Say we take you down to 4%. That's $50 a month. So you're going to save $600 a year, but it's going to cost you $2,000 to refinance. Well, I'm telling you right now, it's going to take you more than 2.5 years to pay off. And if you're moving in 3 years, it's not smart. So I'm telling you right now, you call me personally, 330-1457. I will go over with you. The most important thing I spoke to you about today is what's your return on investment for the loan. If I can recapture your investment of $1,500 within 5 months by saving you $300 a month, I'm going to tell you to do that loan immediately. But if I'm saving you $300 a month and it costs you $8,000 in order to do that, I'm probably going to tell you to go elsewhere. So the return on your investment, how fast you can recapture the expense of acquiring the loan, is the most important thing. You right now have the key. You know my number, 330-1457. You call me personally. I'm not going to flack you out to a telemarketer. You're not going to talk to one of my assistants. You're going to talk to me, the owner. We'll get you pointed in the right direction. We'll build a friendship. You've listened to Jay Garvens. This is the Jay Garvens Show. I'm your friend. Have a great weekend.